Good morning, Revolution, everybody. The old crew is back. And we're going strong. Rosanna, good morning. Anita and
Good
Scott.
morning.
Morning.
We got a lot to talk about this morning. Ceasefire. The momentum is picking up. We're going to be digging into that. Then we want to talk about Project 25. That's a very, if you like scary movies, we would invite you to read an interview with the head of the Heritage Foundation in the New York Times. I believe his name is Roberts. And about the plans that the Republican right, the MAGA right, the fascist element have if Trump is elected. And so we're going to be digging into that. And then tomorrow, at 11 o'clock sharp Eastern, 10 Central, 8 Pacific, CPUSA Socialism in Our Day National Committee is meeting to begin planning for our upcoming 32nd National Convention in Chicago, beginning on June 7th in the year of our Lord 2024. So we're going to be talking about some of the plans for the convention, what Rosanna and Scott and Anita have in mind for us on those 3 important days in June. But first, SEIU, Mary Kay, ceasefire now. That's a big endorsement of the call for a ceasefire. Yesterday, Minneapolis City Council voted 9-3 for a ceasefire. And that vote is important because the mayor is going to veto. Mayor's going to veto, and the city council is going to have to overturn the veto. Entertainers coming out for a ceasefire. Scott, Kate Blanchett, and Drake. The mayor of your former city, Scott, Brandon Johnson, coming out. Yes, for a ceasefire.
And Brandon Johnson coming out for the ceasefire is, I mean, it's not at all surprising, first of all, but that's part of labor coming out for the ceasefire. Brandon Johnson comes from the Chicago Teachers Union, which also, I think nearly unanimously, their House of Delegates approved a ceasefire resolution. So this is a huge mobilization. There's no reason anyone shouldn't support, well, unless you're a billionaire, making money from selling bombs that are murdering people in Palestine. There's no reason anyone shouldn't support a ceasefire. You don't have to say, who started it, who's in the right, who's in the wrong. You just have to say a peaceful solution is needed, and the killing has to stop. That's all you need to say.
Well said.
Now, here's an interesting question, which I was initially going to ask you, Scott, but you kind of jumped the gun, so I'm going to ask Anita. At the UAW CAB conference in D.C., Anita, Sean Penn came out with a very strong endorsement of Joe Biden. He said he stood with us on the picket line. Trump's a scab, he said. We ain't supporting those scabs. Therefore, we're going to go with the president. Now, some people are critical of that, saying that, hey, Brother Fang, you said that support has to be based on whether or not you're proving yourself to be, and part of that proof you should be for a ceasefire. So the question is, was it a good thing for
Sean Fain to
not so good, or none of our goddamn business?
Well, I think it was a good thing, Joe. I think Sean Fain is a really strong leader. He's a spokesperson for working people, and he has led his union, his hundreds of thousands of workers in to endorse a ceasefire. But Sean Fain recognizes that the ruling class works in complex ways. And Joe Biden does not represent, he is not the embodiment of the ruling class here. He has really ruled, the way the Biden administration has approached labor, they are the most pro-labor administration. And Trump is probably the most, in recent years, the most corporate president. Trump is already promising another big tax cut for the CEOs. It's clear that Trump is a scab. I think that was a really apt, a billionaire and a scab, an apt description of his approach. So I think it was a good thing.
Rosanna, we're going to have a lightning round. Good thing, bad thing, or none of our business?
I think it's a good thing because I think that, he took a look at what are the victories that working people have been able to accomplish under the Biden administration. There's so many things that we have to consider, not just one single issue. So I think being able to have these victories under the Biden administration is key, and he can see that that's possible under Biden as opposed to under Trump, who's already threatened so many things against working people, immigrants, everybody that he can think of.
Scott, what do you think about that critique? Good thing, bad thing, or none of our business?
Well, in some sense, none of our business, right? The endorsement is a matter for the leadership and the membership of the UAW. But as partisans of organized labor and of the working class, I think it's a good thing. Yes, there's a contradiction between the demand for a ceasefire and the endorsement of Biden. But contradiction is the reality of working class life. That's what we live with every day. The contradiction between what we have and what we need, between what we deserve and what capitalism allows us, between what we produce, what we receive, right? We don't shy away from those contradictions. We don't demand that everything be, prepackaged into easily digestible pieces or whatever. We confront them and we solve them through struggle. That's what dialectics is about, right? So the question isn't, can we support Joe Biden because we demand a ceasefire and he is abetting this genocide in Gaza? The question is, what has to be done in struggle to move the Biden administration to a position that is correct, that does not compromise the struggle against fascism? So this contradiction is important, and we shouldn't shy away from it at all.
But Anita, isn't the main thing, and this is one of the things we'll be debating at the NC tomorrow, isn't the main thing to, right now, of course, we don't endorse bourgeois candidates, we don't endorse Biden, we sure enough ain't endorsing Donald Trump, we ain't endorsing Mr. Kennedy, nor are we going to endorse the good Reverend, what's his name, Cornel West. But isn't the main thing for us to focus on the issues, and the most important issue now is the ceasefire? I mean, if we're going to move, young people are furious, understandably so. I'm mad as hell too. Black folk furious at the president for supporting. So if you want to move those, isn't the most important thing is to focus on a ceasefire right now? Because I can't see what's going to happen in November if that war is still going on. Am I wrong about that? Tell me, because I'm part of a collective, and the collective will correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right about that, Joe. We really, the election is 11 months away, and there's going to be a lot of history happening in those 11 months. I'm sure, there's just going to be developments that we can't foresee at this point. But what we want right now, what the initial, most imperative demand is for a ceasefire now to end the slaughter of innocent people in Palestine, in Gaza. we have to address that first. And I think there are honestly, some unscrupulous groups that are trying to use the pro-Palestine demonstrations and so forth to promote themselves and their own, left-wing, ultra-left candidates. And that's really insidious. I think people should not be focused on November at this point. Why should we make decisions that we can't decide? We'll worry about November in October, but right now we just need to demand a ceasefire and to put pressure on the Biden administration to take steps to help us with that, because the Israelis are definitely just digging in. So they're not going to move without U.S. Pushing them.
There's a lot of money in the game, Rosanna. You know, you heard about that story about one of the AIPAC or one of them groups promising to give a candidate in Michigan $10 million if he ran against Rashida Tlaib. Now you hear the same thing is going on with Mr. Bowman in upstate New York in Westchester County. 20 million. And doubled it. They said, oh, 10 million wasn't enough. You need to reach into those pockets. The support for those progressive candidates who are coming out for a ceasefire is a big thing. Don't you think, Rosanna?
I do. I think it's really important that, even if there's 20, 30 million, $100 million being paid to these candidates, it's important to remember that we still have the power as working people. We just need to unite, together and demand it and continue that pressure and continue to support these progressive candidates that are speaking about the issues that are important to us and represent the working class as opposed to the ruling class. But so they could pay them all kinds of money, but if the forces as working people, we gather together and unite and demand that these things happen, it'll take a little time, yes, but it can happen because we do have, we're bigger than money can buy.
You know, Scott, they're always following the Israeli money and the money from Jewish organizations. I wish they would follow the WAF's money too. They'll never talk about that. I mean,
What I want to
big,
follow
big.
is the
Go ahead.
weapons industry money.
The weapons industry money, yeah, that's part of
Mhm.
that WAF's money too. I'm talking about old money. That's what
Mhm.
I'm talking about. Ruling class money from the Rockefeller, Morgan, DuPont, clans. Just to name a few of those big bourgeoisie finance capital kind of people. But the pressure is building, 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 Scott. And I just saw yesterday that William Burns, the head of the CIA, is being sent to Israel and Palestine now and to negotiate a 2-month ceasefire. They want 2 months, and they're sending the CIA to
That's
good
never a good
thing,
sign.
bad thing, or none of our business, Scott.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get it. I don't get how anybody who's not directly making money from this slaughter can be against a ceasefire. Especially the people in the Biden administration repeating over and over, we want a two-state solution. We support self-determination for the Palestinian people. And then doing zero, zero. We have more leverage with the government of Israel than any other country in the world, none of it being used for to stop the massacre of the Palestinian people, and how any human being can look at that and not be horrified and disgusted and moved to stand up against it. I don't get.
Well, our producer says that they were send Mickey Mouse over there to negotiate if it works. But I don't think Mickey has the dirty tricks in his bag that the CIA has. So, be careful. They know what they're doing, though. Some folks over there, they've been out there a long time. There's some hardened folks over there, experienced, and they know what they're dealing with. And it's their struggle, and they will determine what they do and what they don't do. Um, because they're fighting fascism and in Israel, and we're fighting fascism over here. And speaking of which, we read this interview of the president of the Heritage, Kevin Roberts. Nobody ever heard of that boy before. Now he's the Heritage Foundation was the main conservative right-wing think tank I think it was initiated under Ronald Reagan. I remember the building that they moved into in D.C. It was in Northeast. Might have been on Maryland Avenue, and one of them avenues anyway. And now it's been taken over by the fascist right, and it's the main proponent of MAGA fascism, that ideological stream. Did you read the interview, Anita?
I read through most of it, I think, not in one sitting, but it was a really frightening document. I was looking especially at the way that they want to, and it's not their ideas alone. It's the ideas of dismantling the administrative state, which is something that Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court is really promoting. It looks like they'll take steps this term to overturn the Chevron deference, which is one of those ways that administrative states, that experts in agencies can take steps to protect our water, our labor rights, all kinds of things that the executive branch of government does and relies on people who know what they're doing, who have the technical expertise to do things like decide if a drug is effective, which now I guess the courts want to take over, and judges in Texas want to decide what's a safe drug and what's not a safe drug. So it's really frightening, and it really is of a piece with a big conservative, right-wing, ultra-right agenda that is afoot and that is embodied by Trump. Trump is using that to get in office, I think, to get him out of jail, basically. He's willing to be their standard bearer. It's really a frightening document.
Rosanna, he says that Joe McCarthy was right. Kevin, in that interview, he said, okay, his methods were a little funky, but Joe McCarthy was basically right. Communists, Chinese communists. Did anybody talk to you? You were over in China recently, Rosanna. Anybody talk to you about you going into government? And where do they get these ideas from?
Well, they fabricate them to convince people to influence people about and divert their attention elsewhere. But I think that document it's very concerning, but I think it outlines what they plan to do so that we can also use it as a way to prepare our own fight back. What is going to be our messaging against these kinds of things that they outline there? And I think that you know it's all about the messaging in many ways, and we have a much more ability to get out our message through social media, through our websites, places like that, and be much more concentrated, focused on some of these fightbacks that clearly that's what they're attempting to do. So let's use that document to prepare ourselves and prepare our messaging so that this influence that they're trying to do and divert them with anti-communism and other things that he outlined there. Let's use it to our advantage and be prepared and begin to prepare what is necessary for that fight back, so that people are not confused, they have clarity, and they're not sucked into wrong ideas that seem to be for their interest but are really totally against their own interest as working people.
You know, Scott, sometimes they use these terms that, are the administrative state. Now, you're on a picket line and you're talking to a sister or sibling or brother who's striking, and you want to explain to them why it's so important to vote against the fascist right, MAGA, Trump, and all of them boys. you you got to tell them, what is the administrative state? What would you tell them?
When the right wing talks about the administrative state, what they mean is stuff like the NLRB that enforces labor law. It means stuff like the EPA that makes sure corporations can't just dump poison into the water. It's the ability of the government, which is elected by the people, to regulate big business. It's the administrative state is their tricky way of saying, the right of the government to limit the action of private property, and it's an attack on democracy. It's an attack on our safety. It's an attack on workers' rights, women's rights, any kind of right that is protected by the regulatory agencies that have been set up.
So basically, Anita, what they're talking about is what we used to call uh, uh, predatory capitalism on crack,
Mhm.
unregulated, and that's what's in store for us.
Well, that's not what's in store for us if we can defeat Trump in November. But yeah, that's what they want to have happen. It's really a complete control, unregulated. It really finishes the project that was begun in under Ronald Reagan to really deregulate industry. As Scott said, it makes workers less safe. It makes people less safe. Yes, the FDA, has the prerogative to rule on something like mifepristone, but they also have a way of reining in, or they're our only hope of reining in pharmaceutical companies from having sort of scam drugs and getting those out. So it's just the administrative state, or the experts that are hired and empowered by laws passed by Congress to put those laws into effect. So it's going to be very dangerous. We're not going to let it happen. We can't let it
And
happen.
we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people because the president has this authority under this schedule something something to fire. And according to, so they're going to fire, 40, 50, 100,000 people and replace them with Trump drones. And, and loyalists to Trump. And that was the big mistake that they think that they made in the first term. They didn't have all their people lined up, so they've been interviewing people and getting them ready, and they got 100,000 fascists standing in line, Rosanna, ready to take over, and they're accusing them all of being communists and members of the Communist Party and socialists. Now, you're in charge of membership, Rosanna. Tell me, how many members of the party do we have in the Department of Labor and in the EPA? I want numbers.
That's the odd thing about this, what he was saying. This like, I was thinking, well, who do we know that's in
Yeah.
these departments? Nobody, absolutely no one. But once again, they can pass out lies all over the place, but we have to be prepared to counter them in a way that's constructive and in a way that's going to change the narrative, because they're really trying to change this narrative that convinces people that this is the way to go. I'm reminded of a movie that's called Our Brand is Crisis, which was how they influenced people in Bolivia during the Civil War there, or not Civil War, to prevent the left government from taking power there. It's a good movie that I really recommend people to see because it really talks about the propaganda that's used, how they just disseminate news, and how is used to influence people, false stuff. It's a very good movie to learn from.
All right. Well, I was going to ask if you met Mr. Robertson in an alley, dark alley, what would you do? But that personalizes it too much, you know. I drag his behind over to Anacostia. Indeed.
If
And
I
let me
met
fight.
the fascist right in a dark alley, I don't want that to happen.
You know, I drag him uptown to 125th Street. Let, drag him to East LA, Rosanna. Anyway, let's move the agenda. We're having our national committee meeting on Saturday. Rosanna, looking forward to the pre-convention discussion period, are you?
I am. I'm really looking forward to hearing what comrades are thinking. I'm looking forward to the collective thinking in clubs and districts about our party and the direction of our party, their experiences on the ground in their communities. I really am looking forward to all that discussion and hearing what some of their ideas are about changes that need to be done or direction. Everything. I am really looking forward to it. Yes.
Now, Scott, you are in charge of the pre-convention discussion period, so all of the
Oh,
pluses
since
and
when? Uh-oh. I'm not
let's
even on
see,
the
you
committee
go
that's
first.
dealing with that.
Don't try to hide. So tell us a little bit about the launching of the pre-convention period. What's going to happen and who's going to be involved and so on and so forth.
So usually when we talk about the convention, we usually sort of fixate on those few days in June when it's going to happen. But actually, that's just the culmination of a much longer process that's going to start at the beginning of February. We're having a town hall on February 4th where we'll formally present the call to the convention, some of the main ideas and priorities of the document that's going to be the kind of centerpiece of our discussion or the framework for our discussion, and talk about pre-convention discussion itself, because it's really important that we understand that the entire convention process is part of the convention. That is not just those few days. The way the party elaborates its analysis, its theory, is based on both the science of Marxism-Leninism and incorporating the experience of the working class and its allies in struggle. And the way we do that is by having these discussions in clubs, in districts, and in other collectives, and in fact, if bringing in people outside the party as well. That's this is not an exclusive, closed process in any way. So we're going to strive to have the most open, collective, unifying discussion that will enable us to really face the next 4 years and rise to the challenge of winning a ceasefire, beating the fascist threat decisively, not just pushing it off, and making the next step toward socialism.
Anita, you read the pre-convention discussion, the draft, the main document, and what struck you about it?
Well, I'll tell you what, the part that I'm most excited about are there's a list at one point about 8 or 10 things that we really should try to address. And I think our pre-convention discussion documents are, people's thinking on that. One of them is AI. What's the significance of artificial intelligence? And I'm really looking forward to thinking about that and going back to even what Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels said about technology development, and and how we can learn from that and see that, look for the right or ask the right questions about AI. So, but there's other things. The labor, where does the labor trade union movement stand right now, and what's the place of the Communist Party in that movement? So there's just a lot of topics there in a list that we're really going to be able to dig into over the next period. It's just, I already feel it. As soon as the 2024 started, you can feel the intensity of activity that that's going to culminate with this convention in June. So it's a really exciting time. I look forward to the pre-convention discussion period, and I want to applaud Scott and the rest of the committee members who have pulled together really good guidelines, and there was an excellent call release that really we took the time as a collective to really determine, if it's what we want to say, and it is, we all agree, it's going to be a really good meeting on Saturday, and great conference in convention in June.
So we will be issuing 3 documents to guide the pre-convention discussion. One will be a draft main political resolution document discussion piece, which will talk about the political moment and all of the issues that are underlying the crisis that is taking place here. And we're in the middle of a crisis, ain't no doubt about it. I hear that the governor of Texas is calling in National Guards from other states because they don't want to take down barbed wire. I think it's a bunch of posturing. But can you imagine that they're daring the president to come on down here, we got something for you? Kind of, it's a real political crisis that we're dealing with, and the sources of it. And one of the things that we say is that the source of this crisis goes all the way back to 1619 and the founding of the country and the revolution of 1776 and the development of what I call a racial and gender-based social division of labor, which is kind of built into the DNA of American capitalism. Those divisions and they manifest themselves in 2 very contrasting visions of how to move forward. One is neoliberalism, what's called neoliberalism, austerity, cutbacks. The other is in union rights and protecting the environment, anti-racism, anti-sexism. In other words, one is in Make America Great Again, and the other is in this idea of a third Reconstruction, or what Martin Luther King Jr. called the establishment of a beloved community. One is in the idea of happy days is here again, all white suburbia. The other is in a multiracial people's democracy on the road to a working class led state, a socialist state. And that's what this fight is basically about. So we're going to be discussing issues related to that and how to move forward and how to defeat the fascist right. But we're also going to have a document on the party itself and the role of the party and what kind of revolutionary working class Marxist Leninist party we're trying to build. Working class led, women led, people of color led, and how to enhance that. And then the third document that we're going to have is going to deal with the international situation. And these 3 documents will guide the pre-convention discussion as we prioritize the fight for a ceasefire, because this pre-convention period, Rosanna, just can't be about talk. It has to be about action on the ground for a ceasefire. I mean, that's one of the things that we have to have an active pre-convention discussion period, don't you think?
Most definitely, because everything happens on the ground. The influences, everything happens there on the ground. And so we have to be on the ground. Otherwise, we're not going to be an effective party or effective movement. So most definitely, everything has to be on the ground.
So we got Scott's social security number, his home address, his email, and his phone number. If you have any criticisms, you know who to talk to.
Bring him on. Bring him on.
He's ready.
I'm open to the voice of the collective.
He's out open to the voice of the broader. Let's have our mailbag question, which is kind of related to some of the things that we were talking to do. What is the party leadership's plan to fight fascism if Trump regime becomes a reality? He said he's going after the communists, and he said it. Should we stay in our country or move to Toronto or Mexico City? Anita?
Well, much as I did like, Trump did inspire me to work on my Spanish just for this particular question. But seriously, we have to stay and fight no matter what. I don't believe he's going to have another go at the presidency. I think he will be defeated in November. But I think regardless of what happens, and even if he is defeated, we still have to fight fascism. It's not going to. Trumpism is not going to go away. It's who knows what violence he'll actually incite if and when he does lose the election. So yeah, no, we're not going away. This is the country that we live in, and we have built it a year, and we're staying and fighting.
Scott, you staying and
I,
fighting? What's the plan?
Yeah, I don't have much to add to what Anita said. We are not giving up this country. We are not leaving and abandoning it to the fascists. We will fight as long as it takes, and we'll fight in the same way that we've always been fighting, on the basis of mass mobilization, of being in our communities and talking to people, of looking to the working class and its allies. It's going to be a lot more difficult and potentially a lot more dangerous if Trump is reelected. But the struggle is the struggle, and we're here.
Rosanna, what's the plan? Staying and fighting?
I'm not
What are
going
you gonna
anywhere
do?
either. I'm staying here to fight till the end. I have a lot of faith in the working class, their sense of justice, their sense of fairness, and their sense of humanity, and so I think I'm not going anywhere. I think that we can organize the fight back, a strong fight back, and so I'm here till the end.
For the record, I do not believe the hype. I believe it's going to be a resounding people's victory in November. And I think that the path toward that victory lies directly in the fight for a ceasefire. Let's focus on that for now.
Here,
And
here.
and once that happens, things will become a lot clearer because there are a lot of other important issues that are on the table, both internationally and domestically. And but like Scott likes to say, we got to strategically defeat the MAGA right, and that's going to involve more than just an election. It's going to involve taking the money out of politics. It's going to, and that's one of the big things. It's going to involve electoral reform. It's going to involve strengthening the labor movement and putting in place a whole number of measures to limit in reduce the impact of racism, sexism, homophobia, anti-immigrant hate. We gotta. It means. You know what it means, Scott, Rosanna, Anita. It means breaking the grip of the monopoly bourgeoisie over the U.S. state. That's what it means in this most extreme right section. And you got to have a whole lot of muscles to do that. You got to have a whole lot of power, a whole lot of solidarity, a whole lot of internationalism, a whole lot of working class love and action in order to make that happen. It's true. That's our show for this week. Good morning, Revolution, everybody. We will see you next week. Same time, same station, maybe a little bit different cast of characters, but all of us will be here in spirit. Take care. See you later. Bye now.
Bye.